So, 2021 has been an interesting year to say the least, both for me personally and in terms of rail fanning. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail or really any detail about everything in my personal life that's happened this year, but for the most part, let's just say that I hope 2022 plays out a little bit differently. In terms of rail fanning, though, I've had some really amazing catches and improvement to my rail fanning outings, the types of catches, the shots that I have of trains, etc. I've invested into a better video camera and editing software this year, and I've learned how to just better video trains in general, in terms of lighting and just other factors that goes into rail fanning. I also went into the year only planning to chase one steam locomotive, which was the big boy, and I ended up chasing 5 in total, with several more planned for 2022. For the first of 3 parts for my video wrap-up of 2021, I'll be following my pattern that I did from last year, where I list and showcase my top catches over the 2021 year. But this year, rather than doing the top 15, I'm going to do the top 20. I've had a lot more catches this year compared to last year, and a lot of the catches that I've had this year were a lot better than last year. I really did try making a top 15 list, but there's just a few extra things I wanted to throw in that I just couldn't bear to leave as honorable mentions. So, it ended up being a top 20. But, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in to my top catches of 2021. Number 20, Union Pacific 1982 Missouri Pacific Heritage Unit. In the summer of 2021, I was actually living in Indianapolis, Indiana for an internship. The train action in Indianapolis wasn't all that great. There were some nearby locations that had good rail traffic, mainly being Muncie, Indiana, and Elkhart. After getting off of work one day, I heard that the Missouri Pacific Heritage Unit was leading NS 23K on the Chicago line heading toward Elkhart. So after I heard that, I made the 3-hour drive up to Elkhart for the first time ever, and I ended up catching 1982 near Elkhart, and then also chasing it to Michigan City. This is my number 20 spot because, and I am prepared for a little bit of hate on this one. I don't really love the Mopac Heritage Unit. It's second from the bottom for me personally on my ranking of the 6 UP Heritage Units. But it was still really cool to see. It was my first UP Heritage Unit, so I had to include it. Number 19, Burlington Northern SD 40-2 from the Indiana and Ohio Railway. The Indiana and Ohio Railway has a pretty wide variety of locomotives. Most are painted in the typical black and orange paint that you see for I&O, but there are some exceptions to this. One particular exception is this Burlington Northern painted SD 40-2 that I caught. I caught this one actually by accident while cruising along the Indiana subdivision for CSX, just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. When I found the locomotive, it was sitting stopped, leading Longhood forward. So I went to Anderson Ferry to wait for it, hoping it would leave. About 30 minutes later, it did leave, and it came by me. Fun fact, I have not uploaded this video. I am not 100% sure where the video is at this very moment. But, if you're seeing the footage of it, then obviously I've found the video. So be looking out for that early in 2022. Number 18, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi Railroad, GP28. I distinctly remember this night because I remember that I was tired and I didn't want to go out rail fanning. I didn't plan to go out rail fanning. Of course, as soon as I made that decision that I wouldn't go out, I noticed that the LaGrange, Kentucky cam had this GP28 trailing on Q574. Even after seeing that, I still decided not to go for it, and so I was sitting in my apartment until I was convinced by some of my railfan friends that I should go get it, and I'm glad I did. So I did end up going to Casey Junction in Covington, Kentucky for it. Um, this locomotive is one of a few from this railroad left on the roster. They have a decent sized roster, but a lot of the engines say that they've been scrapped. Um, I'm also told that GP28s are relatively rare. I'm not entirely sure how rare they are, but I think that made it a worthy top 20 catch. Number 17, CSX Office Car Special with Baltimore and Ohio heritage schemed F40s. So this one was pretty cool since I love the old Baltimore and Ohio paint schemes. I've caught the CSX Office Car Special one time before when CSXT 1 and 2 were still painted as CSX 9993 and 9998 in the YN3B paint scheme. I had originally planned to drive to the Henderson subdivision a few days before I caught this, and I decided not to because it was a 4-hour drive, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't now, because the Office Car Special, which was running under P001 that day, ended up running eastbound out of Chicago through Deschler, Ohio to Fostoria, Ohio. And then they got a crew change at Fostoria, and then they went south towards Columbus. So I ended up driving up to Deschler, which was only 2 hours. And then I chased it from Deschler to Fostoria, and then from Fostoria about halfway to Columbus, before the afternoon traffic effectively screwed me over out of being it to Columbus. Interestingly enough, a few days later, a pickup truck rammed into the side of CSX 2 and 3, so I am glad I got it before that damage was done to the locomotives. Number 16, NS 1073 Penn Central Heritage Unit on NS 25A. Okay, now before you hit that dislike button for placing the Penn Central higher than a rare GP28, higher than the CSX OCS, and especially higher than UP 1982, just hear me out. So I caught my first Heritage Unit on January 26, 2020 in Lexington, Kentucky. I didn't know much about train symbols at the time, but I later found out that that first Heritage Unit, which was NS 1074, was trailing on NS 177. Ever since then, I started the typical rail fanning goal of seeing all 20 Norfolk Southern Heritage Units lead trains. A little over a year and a half later, I caught NS 1073 trailing on NS 25A in Mason, Kentucky, which is this catch right here. That was the last of the 20 NS Heritage Units I needed to see all 20. I also ended up catching this one leading in August of this year, so now I've seen all 20 NS Heritage Units lead, which is a pretty cool thing to actually be able to say. So this is why this one kind of holds a special place in my top 20. It marked a goal that I had set out to achieve, and it marked the end of that goal where I finally caught all 20. Plus, unpopular opinion, I really like 1073 compared to a lot of the dislike that it gets in the community. I know it's simple. I know it's just black and white. It's just something about it that I like to an extent. Number 15, Amtrak 100 Midnight Blue Paint Scheme. This catch was pretty unexpected. I only caught it around a week ago, so about 2 days before Christmas. This is the Midnight Blue paint scheme from Amtrak, which was painted to in tribute to the Amtrak workers that keep trains going overnight. I'm glad I caught this in Florida, especially in the daylight, since trying to catch the locomotive at night on the Cardinal in Cincinnati would not have been that great for lighting. This catch also would have been higher had it been leading, but unfortunately both the Silver Meteor trains it was on had the unit trailing. The locomotive is actually in Florida today as I am recording this, but it's trailing, so that's why I'm not out waiting for it. Number 14, Union Pacific 1989 Rio Grande Heritage Unit. This is another catch alongside UP 1982 that I hadn't planned to get this year. About 3 days after catching UP 1982, I was granted with more luck with the Denver and Rio Grande Heritage Unit, leading a westbound NS 205 on the Chicago line. Made another drive up to Elkhart to catch the locomotive, but ended up changing my mind and getting it in Goshen, Indiana, and then chased to Michigan City, Indiana, rather than Elkhart. Number 13, CSXT 911, leading Q352. For my number 13 spot, I picked the CSX 911, Spirit of Our First Responders unit. The order of the Pride and Service units also reflects my opinions about them, which means 911 is my least favorite of the three. Now, don't get me wrong, all three look great, and I think CSX did an outstanding job with all of the paints. Now, if only they would paint heritage units, cough, cough. I just think the schemes for the other two units, though, are more inventive and more cool, I guess I could say, than 911, since it looks similar to some of the other first responders units from the other railroads. But anyway, specifically about this catch, I caught it in March of 2021 in Wildwood, Florida. I caught it at night, but this is the first daylight catch I have of it. So I think that's pretty cool. Number 12, Union Pacific 4014 Big Boy Chase. So when I first caught and chased the big boy this summer, I figured that would be it. This would be by far the number one catch of this year, and there's nothing that I could get that could possibly top it. Well, turns out this isn't even in my top 10. And of the 5 steam engines I've seen this year, it's only 4 out of 5, and of the 4 chases I've done, I rank it the last out of 4. And I've listed diesel locomotives above it on my top 20 list. Now, don't get me wrong, chasing 4014 through Missouri and Illinois this year was absolutely amazing. I met a ton of new people and got to see the world's largest operating steam locomotive in person. But it was also easily the hardest out of all of my steam chases of 2021. I was chasing with, at any given point, between the people with the cameras out, tripods set up, and people in traffic, there was probably 1,000 people that I was in the middle of at any point trying to chase the thing. Even more when it was stopped at like a location refueling. It doesn't really take away from it, but just compared to some of the other steam locomotive chases and some other catches, I just like them better than the big boy. Number 11, CSXT 559, leading a coal train with a Leslie RS3K horn. So, prior to October of 2021, I never paid a ton of attention to locomotive horns. Yeah, if one sounded cool, I'd make note of it, but I didn't really pay attention and keep an eye out for specific horns. My good friend CRB Trains actually got me into paying closer attention to horns. This catch was unexpected. I opted to go out on the night of Thanksgiving just to see if I could get anything running on the Wildwood subdivision. And surprisingly enough, there was a CSX E040, which is a northbound empty coal train. Leading the train was CSX 559, which sports a Leslie RS3K horn. This horn is pretty rare on Class 1 railroads in general, especially CSX, and I think this is the only 6-axle CSX engine that has an RS3K. I'm not completely sure on that. That's the only one I've been able to find video of or confirmation of. So it was pretty great to see and hear. Number 10, Père Marquette 1225 chase. So as CRB Trains is watching this video, I can feel him internally screaming that this only barely made my top 10. But coming into my top 10, I've listed my chase of the Père Marquette 1225 steam locomotive. This trip was originally unplanned towards the start of 2021. In fact, the big boy was my only planned trip, but some friends wanted to go and see it, so it was a great opportunity to travel to Owasso, Michigan to do so. The shots were great, although this year we would actually be gifted with some rare sunlight in Michigan. which most of the time, most of the videos you see of 1225, it's cloudy or snowing, which I would have rather had a snow shot, but I'll take what I can get. But this sunlight meant that some of the shots were somewhat backlit, unfortunately. But overall, the chase was great. I do hope to go again one day in the next couple of years. Number 9, CSXT 1776, Spirit of Our Armed Forces Chase. The CSX 1776 was actually originally one of my least favorite of the Pride and Service locomotives, but it's since worked its way up to my second favorite. Its camo design is very unique in my opinion, and I couldn't have asked for a better lighting or better time, I guess I should say, for the chase of this locomotive on the CSX Cincinnati subdivision. The locomotive also sports a Leslie S5T, which is a big plus, especially since CSX 911 had its RS5T removed. It kind of gave this locomotive a big boost for me. Number 8, Canadian National Dash 8 Standard Cab. So, only about 2 weeks into 2021, I was in Wildwood, Florida with my mother, and I got very lucky in catching CSX K421 with a CN-8 trailing. This Dash 8 was unique because it was a standard cab, and there aren't a ton of those left. And to make the catch even better, the whole train was Canadian National Power, and the Dash 8 was also a former Chicago Northwestern locomotive. I almost forgot about this one actually until I stumbled upon it looking through my channel, and there's no way I couldn't include this in the top 20. Number 7, CSXT 3194, Spirit of Our Law Enforcement at Winton Place, Ohio. So I have seen 3194 a ton this year. And I'm not saying that to brag for the people who haven't seen it. I just never imagined I would see it as much as I have, considering how rare the Pride and Service units were prior to March of 2021. I've seen it on Q441, 442, and 603 in Florida, and on Q208, 209, 317, 352, and 561 all around Cincinnati multiple times. But of all the shots and chases of 3194, my favorite would have to be this one, with it coming south on Q209 past Winton Place in Cincinnati. The morning sun was amazing, and I really hope I get a chance to get 1776 and 911 here, but I'm not going to hold my breath for that. Number 6, Little River Railroad Christmas Chase. This was a very unplanned chase for me. Right after getting back from Owasso, Michigan from chasing 1225, I saw an ad pop up on my phone for the Little River Railroad in Coldwater, Michigan. After looking into it, I saw that the weekend after our 1225 chase would be the Little River's last steam weekend of the year, so I opted to go out for the chase. I ended up very much enjoying it, chasing all 3 runs that day, and I really liked their 462 Pacific number 110. It's the smallest standard gauge Pacific type steam locomotive in the U.S., which is really cool, because I like smaller steam better than big usually. Their 040 tank engine was cool too, but there's a lot of 040 still in service, so it wasn't as exciting. It was also only about 15 degrees and extremely windy that day, and I don't think I've ever been that cold. If you've ever had brain freeze from eating ice cream, imagine having it from wind. I kid you not, it was so windy and cold that while videoing the 110, I got brain freeze, or what felt like it from the wind blowing on my forehead. But overall, I loved the chase, so it was really worth the cold. Number 5, BNSF H1 scheme on CSX G126. Entering my top 5 catches, I've got to admit these were really hard to pick through. There were some that I didn't feel like others would consider top 5, but it's my personal ranking. At number 5, I have my BNSF H1 scheme trailing on G126. This was a newly added train for the Wildwood sub due to a new port opening in Tampa, Florida. This was a run-through train, meaning that it usually has lots of BNSF power. This was the first run, and I got super lucky to have this H1 scheme trailing. Number 4, Amtrak 160-8 Phase 3 Heritage Unit. At number 4, we have the Amtrak 160, which is the Dash 8 Phase 3 Pepsi Can P42 Heritage Unit. Now, that's a mouthful. When I say that I was excited to hear this was coming, I was probably close to foaming. I love seeing pictures of the Pepsi Can Dash 8s. Plus, this is my second favorite Amtrak Heritage Unit, so it was really great to see. Plus, when I got it in the morning, the sun was just so perfect, I couldn't have asked for better lighting. The locomotive was also very clean, so the shot that I got at DeLand, Florida, or DeLand, Florida, however you say that, is pretty great. Number 3, Amtrak 161 Phase 1 Heritage Unit. This is my favorite Heritage Unit from Amtrak, and I don't know what it is about this locomotive. Maybe it's pictures of the old Amtrak locomotives in this paint that makes me like it, but it's just such a cool paint to me. I was really excited to hear that they were planning a new Phase 1 Heritage Unit to replace the old one that got wrecked. And I've also caught this locomotive twice, once in Palatka, Florida, southbound, and once in Lake Mary, Florida, northbound. Number 2, Southern Pacific Paint 6367. So before I list my number 1, I'm going to do a couple honorable mentions. I wanted to include the 2 BNSF war bonnets, also commonly called fake bonnets, number 732 and 777. 777 was unexpected while I was waiting for UP 1982, and 732 was intentional. But for me, I just can't add them to the, to my top 20. I think they're awesome, but maybe if one had lead or if they were a real ATSF war bonnet, maybe they would have made the list. I'm also including 2 of the NS locomotives, number 8120 and 9564 that I caught, which both sport Leslie RS5T horns. It was great seeing these 2 non-special painted locomotives lead with these horns, especially since I caught 9564 leading through Lawrenceburg, Indiana. The horn was great. But I've seen locomotives with special paints with these horns, specifically 3194 911. So they just couldn't make the cut. Fun fact, I've also seen 9921, which sports a 5T, but it was trailing, unfortunately. I've also included NS 8102 Pennsylvania Heritage Unit at Winton Place for my honorable mentions. I don't really like 8102. My friends know this. I don't know what it is. I just don't like the paint on it. But I needed a better shot of it leading for my website, which is coming soon, so stay tuned for that. Little shameless advertising there. But the lighting was great that morning at Winton, so I caught it leading NS 282, so that was a perfect shot for the website. Finally, I want to include the Canadian National BC Rail C40-8M. This was such a cool catch that I didn't plan on getting that day. I knew it was in the yard. I knew it was going out on a northbound train. Didn't know which one, didn't know when. I just happened to be at a crossing, and the gates or the lights came on, and there it was. Unfortunately, the locomotive is dirty. It was trailing, and it was a cloudy day, and I didn't really have a good place to stand back far enough to pan on the locomotive. I don't ever expect to see one lead, at least not around me, but at least I wish it had been sunny. So that kind of knocks it out of the top 20 for me. Number 1, Southern 4501 at the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum. So I'm not really too sure what I can say about this catch, or this chase, I guess I should say. 4501 is probably also the favorite steam locomotive that I've seen in 2021. And I don't know what it is about it. I think what I really love about this chase is the scenery. If you compare it to the Big Boy was cool, but it was all wide open fields out, in Missouri. Not a lot I could do about that. 1225 was cool. So was the Little River. But there was a lot of crossings, and there was kind of just a lot of urbanization and just open fields. But when you look at the 4501 chase and the route that it takes on the Missionary Ridge Local, there are no road crossings, which at first seems kind of like a hassle. But when you really look at it, look at the shots that I got compared to the other ones. I didn't get it at any road crossings, but I got crossing 2 bridges, coming out of a tunnel, and then coming into the depot around a curve. Like, I don't think I could have asked for better lighting and a better chase the day that I chased this thing if I wanted to. Like, I don't think that I could do any better than what I did with this. That makes me really excited to chase 630 next year whenever it runs. And I just hope I can produce the same quality chase that I did for 4501. It was really a struggle whether to place this over some of my other steam locomotives I caught. But the scenery from this chase, I can't not put this as number 1. So there you have it. Those are my top catches of 2021. If you did sit through the whole video, it was longer than I planned. But if you did, thank you so much for watching. I will have a Q&A video coming out in the next day or two that wrap up 2021 with some shout-outs for some special channels at the end of that. So stay tuned for that. And hopefully 2022 will be filled with even better catches than these.